Chuck, it's always great to have you here in Atlanta. I
Great to be
wish
here.
you would be here when it was warm. We were here in January when it was cold. It was sort of cloudy and it was foggy, and today it's chilly.
Who says the South is a hotbed?
Yeah, that's right. That's what I always hear.
Yeah.
No mosquitoes this time of year. That's the only
right.
good thing. So here we are. When we were together last in January, we were talking about what the political season was going to look like. We now see it.
Right.
It has taken shape. And let's begin with Warnock and Walker. I was in Savannah on Friday, and it was a curious sort of event. It had the feel of a big-time sporting event. It had a lot of people on both sides waiting for the candidate to walk through the gauntlet. You know, it was an event that was unlike any other kind of U.S. Senate debate that we've seen in these here parts.
Sounds like you're describing the entrance of a WWE match.
It did
a little
feel like
bit,
that, Ric
right?
Flair.
You know, woo, right? You start to do that. You know, here's a question that's been gnawing at me, and you can't re-war game this, but you've been around here a while, which is, I think everybody kind of agrees Warnock's up a couple of points on Walker. We can debate whether it's 3, 5, whatever. Let me ask you this. If Kelly Loeffler were the nominee right now against Warnock, would we be in the same place? Or would Loeffler be slightly ahead? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm curious to see, is Walker just getting generic Republican vote, or is he underperforming the Republican vote?
Do you think the polling is reflective of what's going on right now? Survey USA, which we had on 11Alive and Tegna, had Warnock up by 12 points, and this was before the abortion issues that sort of surfaced. Some of the other ones have been 5, 6 points. I'm not sure.
No, I cherry pick my polls, meaning I don't, look, there's certain polling firms who I think attempt some accuracy, but they don't know how to wait. Yeah. Okay, they just don't understand the state a little bit. And so, you know, I understand that and to me this is why the worst thing to do is look at a Real Clear Politics or 538, because they're taking a lot of bad polls and trying to create a better number, and that doesn't make any sense to me. You can't take bad data and somehow get better data out of it. And I take that point. But that's really the question is, who is the voter that's going to punish Walker for character? How many of them are there? And do we see them in the polls today, or do you not see them until the last minute? Right? And I don't know the answer to that question.
Do you think Democrats have made a mistake going after the character of Walker? It's a very easy cherry pick, given the course of his life over the last 15 or 20 years. The reality is a lot of people in this state are voting because of the R next to his name. They care less about Herschel Walker as the politician more than the fact that he's going to vote with what they believe.
Well, that's why, I mean, at the end of the day, if you view Walker as a version of Trump, and meaning how do you peel away Trump voters? Well, Biden ran on character, and there seems to be a slice of suburban voter, college-educated white male, is sort of demographically kind of what this voter looks like, that are Republican-leaning but didn't like Trump. So I do think that's still the strategy, and I get what they're trying to do. But it's a fair question, and you know, should you be hitting him on character or hitting him on an issue? Is it better? And do you hit him on what he did on abortion, or do you hit him on how he treated his ex-wives?
See, I think a lot of the money that comes into Georgia from out of state doesn't really understand the cultural ramifications of what we're looking at, and that is, generationally, two of the most exalted positions in Southern life are preacher and football star.
Yeah,
and we have both of those.
It's an interesting way of putting it together.
And we have Herschel Walker, who is like Frank Sinatra in this sense. You may never have met him, but he's been part of your family for over 40 years. He's a beloved figure in the state, whether you like him or not politically. And to attack him, I think, comes with some risk.
Well, I found it interesting that I think it's an ad I saw last week, still airing, where Warnock has 3 Georgia Bulldog fans. and it's an older gentleman who says, I love Herschel Walker on my wall, but I don't want him in the Senate. So it was an interesting, clearly what you're bringing up is something they're seeing in the polls, that, hey, these people like Walker and also don't think he's qualified to be in the Senate. So can you find a way to say, give him a permission slip? No, you're not telling you have to take number 34 off your wall. We're just telling you don't want him in the United States Senate.
Among the large gaggle of reporters after this debate, everybody, no matter their politics, was saying, wow, Walker did really well. Surprisingly did well. I think the bar was so low that anything above heart and lung function was
Yeah.
a victory for Herschel.
Well, and that we see that happen a lot when people play these debate games. It's also why I'm always of them. I never understand why campaigns only do one.
Yeah.
If you only do one, then the debates matter. If you do 5, none of the debates matter.
Yeah, that's right.
And it actually, though, but it's better for the voter. Like at the end of the day, I want to see more because you do get a better sense of what they may or may not do if they actually are forced to talk about it. I have to tell you, a frustration for me watching this race is I don't know what the policy disagreements are because it really has turned into nothing but a character.
It's
a character,
throwing pies at
yeah,
each other. Yeah.
It has gotten to that point, and that was something that I noticed talking with our independent voters. In fact, I had one voter say, well, I don't know if I'm going to vote for either one of them. And I said, well, if you vote for the third candidate, you're voting for a runoff. And he goes, that means more ads. I don't want that.
I don't want that,
And
no.
it was a fascinating reaction. Oh my God, you just made the case for why I have to pick one.
Yeah.
But I don't want to have to do that. I thought that was interesting.
All right, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but let's talk a little bit about Kemp and Abrams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw the debate or not from the other night, but the libertarian was the contrarian in this, and,
Right.
and really became, in many ways, a bit of a distraction in this debate. I felt, he was calling for the abolishing public schools and
Sure, very libertarian type of.
and ending property tax. Fine, who's going to pay for the sewers, right? Democracies don't work like that. But we really, this felt like a replay of 4 years ago, though things have changed. Kemp is a stronger leader, certainly has stronger standing than he did 4 years ago, and we know Stacey Abrams better. It had a different tact with much of the same choreography of language.
It's interesting watching Stacey Abrams run a second time, and I've watched a lot of rematch races. Most rematch races, the person who lost the first time rarely wins the second time. It never happens. Sometimes it's simply the incumbent is just viewed as, quote, growing in the office, or you just get used to them. The challenger sometimes like, what else have you done other than run for this office type of thing. So I do think we underestimate, and maybe Stacey Abrams underestimated the hill she's trying to climb, which is to win a rematch. It is, knocking off, not just winning a rematch, knocking off an incumbent governor. First-time incumbent governor is truly a difficult task in this country. It is the hardest thing. The easiest thing to do is to knock off a first-term member of Congress. The next easiest thing to do is to knock off an incumbent senator. Then comes governor, then comes president. We, as a people, usually want to give our presidents and governors 2 terms. You have to create a fireable offense. And what I've struggled, and I've asked Stacey Abrams, what is the fireable offense? And it sounds more like the campaign she ran in 2018, and she doesn't, it's not, it doesn't, there's not one thing she's pointing to. She'll point to the gun bill, I think, when you ask her for a concrete issue.
Right.
But you could tell that there's something missing here. And maybe it's simply the Trump Teflon, or the anti-Trump Teflon, that Kemp got to coat himself in.
All right, so what do you think we're going to see on Election Day? Are we talking red wave here, or is it too early to tell you?
Well, I think I do think polarization makes large waves almost impossible to happen.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have a high turnout. I mean, look at early voting already.
Unbelievable,
That's right.
140,000.
Now, I think we're in the middle of a behavioral change on voting, meaning let's not assume that super early voting means high turnout. I think people are changing their habit of when they vote. So we'll know after whether this is a super surge, but there's every indication that turnout is going to be up.
It's up 85%
Yeah.
for the midterms in 2018. Amazing.
But the thing is that we're so polarized and we're so close. You just need a gust of wind.
Right.
And all of a sudden, a bunch of 48-48 races go 52-48, right? 51-49. So both things can be true. We can have a very polarized environment, very close election, and a gust of wind at the last minute to the R's, which right now it feels like you could just sort of, feels like the wind is picked up. It feels like the midterm looks more traditional. The economic issues are starting to trump. But I'll tell you, every time I look at an internal poll and I see the gender gap, and I see the gender gap on issues, when the single most important issue among women is abortion. It may be number 4 overall, but you're whistling past the graveyard if you don't look at the issue based on gender. So that to me is still the unknown out here, because if 18 to 35-year-olds show up in a higher number than they showed up in 18, then everything changes.
I could talk to you for hours, but we need to wrap it up because you have other things to do. Chuck,
And I got to get you on my show. Always good.
I look
Jeff.
forward to it.
All right,
Thanks,
buddy.
man.